All right, guys, we have another video about The View, right? And I know some of you guys are like, man, you watch The View a lot. No, I actually don't watch The View. I actually don't watch television at all. I don't even own a TV. Maybe I should buy one. But I just come across these segments and news articles and the crazy things they say, and then I just go watch the clip to get full context on it. And then if they say something that I want to respond to, then I respond to it. Or if they have a interesting conversation with somebody, then I'll make a video about it, right? If I want to make a video. And in this situation right here, they actually had a very, very, very interesting conversation with Mr. John McWhorter, who is a professor at Columbia University, who has this new book out called Woke Racism, which basically outlines how the new anti-racist practices of the progressive left are dangerous to this society and actually has been a hindrance to Black America. Now, he's gonna blow their mind in this segment, as he's gonna basically argue that the woke racial indoctrination that we're seeing in schools is unnecessary to Black people being successful in this country, and quite honestly is kind of a waste of time. And also how the January 6th protesters, they actually are not that powerful. They don't have much power compared to those on the progressive left. Take a look.
Theory to court cases to Capitol Hill, racism seems to be a constant hot topic in America. But Columbia professor John McWhorter claims that modern anti-racist movement has lost its way and is harming the country in his new book, Woke Racism: How a New Religion Has Betrayed Black America. Please welcome New York Times best-selling author John McWhorter.
These days, there's this new way. And the new idea is that to get past what we need to get past, we need to teach non-Black America that they are complicit in an abstract sense in a racism that's all around us, and that until you understand that complicitness and feel a certain guilt for your white privilege and realize that that stain will never leave you, then Black America can't get forward. And my issue is just that I think Black America can get forward without that grand psychological experiment, which, it's not that I don't think it's pretty or something, I don't think it's gonna work. And there are too many people who really need help for us to indulge in that third wave. That's my problem with it.
So I just want to make sure I understand. So are you saying you don't think the racism that people have been pointing out exists?
No, racism does exist.
Okay.
And call me a cynic, I'm not sure how much we can completely eliminate it. And this is the thing. I think that Black Americans can succeed despite the fact that non-Black people are psychologically imperfect. My main interest is in what we can do to move ahead and to finish the job. And I'm not saying racism is okay, and I'm not saying there's no such thing as systemic racism. I'm saying that focusing on teaching America lessons about that isn't necessary to creating happier Black lives.
John, I think many people struggle with how to talk about race these days, and you describe a catechism of contradictions that illustrates just how confusing these messages can be. Can you give us some examples and any advice for people who want to have more productive conversations about race?
Well, if you have something that doesn't make any sense, you have to call it out. And I hate to say that that's true even when you're thinking about racism. So, silence is violence. So you're supposed to say something. And silence and violence rhyme. So silence, sort of. Silence is violence, okay. But then on the other hand, don't elevate Black voices over yours. Don't talk too much. Where's the happy medium? If you don't date Black people, you're probably a racist. If you do date Black people, you need to consider that you might be a racist because you might be exotifying Black people. What do you do with that? You can keep going with that sort of thing. And what I'm saying is that sort of thing, we call it the race thing. And everybody kind of looks over each other's shoulders and talks about how complicated it is. I'm not sure what the point of that is. There are people out in the world who are suffering. We need policy, we need pragmatic solutions, not these abstract conversations that are more about feeling guilty, teaching people to be guilty, virtue signaling. All of that, to me, is recreation. We need to get back to what the civil rights leaders 50 years ago were doing.
But you said in the book, you devote about 3 paragraphs to what took place on January 6th, and you claim that those people don't have real power. And I think that we're in this interesting moment in which they do, and the people you're writing about do. Isn't it possible? But they and the DEI practitioners both have power, because the moms who are trying to get books banned from about Ruby Bridges banned from schools, and the people who are concerned that learning about Martin Luther King damages their children, they've got power just as much as a Columbia professor does, just as much as I do.
There are people who are trying to turn upside down our intellectual, artistic, moral, and judicial culture. To a large extent, and Jane, I know you know this because we've talked about it, to a large extent, they're succeeding. Are there other bad things happening in the country? Yeah, but if I see the institutions that I'm familiar with, and that is, for example, academia, the judicial system, what we think of as morality, what we think of as culpability, and the arts, I think of those things as at least a little bit important. If I see those things being turned upside down by a really frightening ideology, then I have to speak out. And I don't know if I can measure whose Holocaust is bigger in these cases, but the only question would be why I wouldn't call out what's going on the left.
But she's saying they have power. Do you agree?
Frankly, I think that I see the same kind of power in basically our whole thinking culture. Now, if you have a kind of person who is also making noise at school board meetings and having certain things done, frankly, every day in my inbox, and it doesn't have to be in my inbox, you can open up the metaphorical newspaper every day and seeing people from the left with a similar kind of power determining how children are being taught. I can't not speak up about that.
Okay, so yeah, I know that was a long clip, but I wanted to play enough of it so that you guys understand this guy's argument, right? Which is not simply that, you know, anti-racism is merely wrong or performative, but he actually is really arguing that it is harmful, right? Specifically to black people. And I would go further to say it's harmful to America, because I think this whole anti-racism wave is basically could lead us to a race war, right? And again, that's one of the reasons why, you know, I have started my channel, is because I want to avoid that. Because a lot of the whole anti-racist stuff is literally calling for racism and discrimination against white people in the name of social justice and equity and equality. And the point that Mr. McWhorter was trying to make to The View is a similar point that I was trying to make with Mark Lamont Hill before that conversation went off the rails about irrelevant stuff, is that there are too many problems and issues in our society for us to be sitting here talking about racism all day, right? To be having these silly race conversations that really are, again, performative in nature, right? He literally outlined some of the contradictions that we hear all the time from the woke race hustlers of the left, like Ibram X. Kendi, right? And these contradictions don't even make sense. They make no sense whatsoever. But the reason why it's like that is because these people have an incentive to continue to push this race conversation, even though it literally is adding no positive return on investment for America or black people, because they make money off of it, right? They get paid off of it. They get speaking fees off of it. They get paid for designing courses off of it, right? So these people have an incentive to keep pushing this stuff, even though, again, it functionally has no positive return on investment for society, period. Because we're not focused on real policy solutions. We're focused on woke nonsense, right? A real policy solution, right? If you really want to help fix black America, okay, from a policy standpoint, you got to start with the school. Black kids in this country are functionally illiterate, okay? We're functionally illiterate. Only 15% of black 8th graders in this country are reading at or above proficiency level. They can't do math either. Right? And that's not just a problem for black people. It is an American problem in general, but I'm just saying black people get the brunt of it. Instead of wasting time talking about critical race theory or race in schools, you should be teaching financial literacy, right? We should be teaching actual hard skills, real life skills that kids are going to need to get jobs right out of high school, right? To start their own businesses, right? We need to bring skills back into high school, right? Help kids make money, right? Help them build wealth, okay? That's what we should be doing. That's what we should be thinking about. However, that's not what we're doing, right? That's not what we're focused on. They're focused on trying to segregate kids, right? Trying to tell white students that they're inherently superior to black students just because of their skin color. But they're not focused on anything that has any real tangible impact that's going to help fix the so-called problem, right? They're not pushing the right cultural solution. And for example, encouraging people to not have kids out of wedlock, right? And to get married and stay married, right? Which honestly is one of the biggest factors in regards to whether or not you will live in poverty, right? The poverty rate for married black couples is less than 10% and comparable to all other races, right? Because marriage is the great equalizer. Those are the things that we should be pushing in school and in society as a whole if you want real solutions. But they don't want to push those things because, one, they actually work, first and foremost, which, if you have any policies that actually really work and help people build wealth on their own, the Democrats don't want that because people become less dependent. And two, there's no race angle to it, right? So the woke race hustlers can't make money off of that. So again, they don't want that, right? That's why you never hear about it. So this guy's right. This race conversation, in my opinion, I would go even further than what he's saying. It is divisive. It's not helping black people, and it's hurting America as well, right, as a whole. Now, the second part of this conversation was about power, right? And, he was talking about January 6th. And, he basically made the argument in his book that the January 6th protesters really don't have any power. And again, this is another argument that I feel like I've made on this channel, is that when all these people want to talk about racism being a power dynamic, right, they almost completely ignore the numerous examples that we have in this society where black people have power, right? For example, Lori Lightfoot basically saying that I'm not going to interview white journalists, or I'm not going to interview with white journalists. That is an example of racism. But they will say it's not racism because she's black, and black people, by definition, don't have power according to the left. But Lori Lightfoot is black and in a position of power, and she's using her power to discriminate against people purely because of their race, right? Again, it almost seems like every major company in corporate America has gone woke, right? They're now pushing anti-racist ideologies and trainings in their corporations. Who is this coming from? This is coming from race hustlers on the left, like Ibram X. Kendi, who is black, right? Pushing this stuff. So how in the world can a black man pushing an ideology like this affect all these companies across this country, but yet black people don't have any power? I don't understand. These people, the woke race hustlers of the left, have more power in this country than a lot of people that the mainstream liberal media wants to fearmonger about, right? Which is the so-called white supremacists, okay? They claim that white supremacists, they're the biggest terror threat, domestic terror threat to this country. But yet, all last year, we saw the woke progressive left tear up major cities across the country, right? We saw it. We didn't see a bunch of white supremacists do that. We saw woke leftists do that. You had one event, January 6th, in which you had some people that were protesting against the government because of the election results, right? And the mainstream media made that out to be the biggest threat in our society, when the reality is none of those people got their way, right? At the end of the day, it was not successful, objectively speaking. However, all those people on the progressive left, to a certain extent, they kind of have got their way, right? Look at the direction our society has been going in ever since the whole George Floyd thing, right? Ever since that happened, okay, we have this very, very, very prominent movement. We're talking about at all levels of society, okay? We're talking about the government. We're talking about schools. We're talking about judicial systems. We're talking about our culture, right? That is transformed, right? That is currently transforming to be aligned with the woke progressive left. And the people that are facing the consequences of a lot of that stuff are people that's not aligned with that, right? That's what's happening. So you want to talk about people that have power in this society. I think those people are the ones that have power. And in my opinion, I will argue that because of the left's definition of racism, which is racism as a power structure, those people are actually the real racists now, okay? Because they're the ones with the power if you accept the leftist definition of racism. So, like I said, I found this conversation to be fascinating, and I'm surprised that The View actually had him on to say something like that, because obviously most of those people on that panel, what he's saying is going to go right over their head. They're not going to get it. They're not going to understand it because they're brainwashed, right? They bought into the victimhood narrative, particularly Sonny Holston and Joy Behar. She bought into the whole white guilt thing, right? So again, I encourage anybody, I know y'all don't like watching The View, but if you want to watch that full segment, I found it to be fascinating because you really can see how they're stunned and they really don't like the things that he's saying. But again, I am surprised that they actually had a conversation with him. And I thought that what he was saying was pretty spot on in regards to the dangers of the woke left and their ideology. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.